good people, too many good people, gone down the path of we all need to move someplace, and then that will somehow become the Shangri-La. It'll just magically happen. This is a dead end, if there ever was one. Try to get 10 people to move to an area, 10 families. Try to come back when you get 50 people to move to an area. You won't be able to take over a town. You don't have an ideology that will protect your participants from anti-whiteism and these meme pathogens. Your activities of relocating are fundamentally correct. When you as a family or a person or a couple of families relocate to some place, you take with you Going Free. You all rear your children in love for white well-being and inoculating them against the psychological warfare that's being waged against us. That is the very first thing and the most important thing that you can do. And then from those places where you can be secure, you spread this curative contagion as wide and far as you can. Now, normally, David, I don't know if you're suggesting this or what exactly, and you're free to mention so in the chat. And I will happily respond to any respectable statement or disagreement. If you're part of groups of people that say, well, we all need to move to an area so that we can take it over, so that we can secede, that is just stupefying. There's no hope in hell. The United States, the Canadian government, the British government, no one is going to allow white people to carve off a part of their territory and say that it is their own. I will imbue you with an honest motivation if this is your position, that you think they're going to reciprocate your equanimity, your kindness, your desire to be fair. If you think that, then that's just naive. And I think it's charming that the naive notion that so many of our people have, that anti-whites are somehow going to reciprocate our good intentions and say, well, you're right. If you'll get along better over there, we'll get along better over here. We'll let you have your own space. That is extremely naive. I think it's very charming. It will never happen. It's never happened. The anti-whites have never left us alone. They have never stopped monitoring. They have never stopped white erasing. That will never happen. If you are one of these people who think that you are going to get 50 families or 100 families to move to an area, and you're somehow going to give some sort of lewd gesture to the government there, that you are on a path to suicide by way of law enforcement. You can't even defeat the local non-white gangs in warfare. You're not going to be able to take on the county government, much less the city government, much less the state government, much less the federal government, much less the fact that all of the governments that the anti-white elites dominate would all come to the aid of the government in question that might be struggling with the 50 people. I mean, do we not remember these folks who are, and I'm not saying you're doing this, David, I don't know, but for these folks who say, well, we just need to set up some sort of a compound. How many babies do you need to see burned alive in places like Waco? How many of these militia groups you see armed to the teeth with their fabulous weapons? I love them too. The 50 cal sniper rifles with the muzzle brake and the magnificent scopes. And I love it all. It's the coolest stuff too. I think it's cool as well. And, you know, the retro AKs and all of this cool. I love it all. It's all cool as well. I get it. It's fun. But what has happened in every one of these cases? The government just drives up. They surround him, Weaver style. They murder the son as he's running home to the house, yelling that law enforcement are in the woods. Shoot him in the back. Shoot the family dog as the dog's running to defend the boy against the agents. Kill the family dog. Shoot the friend that's over at the house, murder him. Then the Weaver and the wife held up inside the shack with the newborn baby, days where they're blaring and all of this, of course, ladies and gentlemen, might be true or it might be false. You have to look for yourself. YouTube decides whether it's true or not. Snopes decides whether it's true or not. CNN decides whether it's true or not. Not no white guilt. I'm just telling you what happened in World of Warcraft. So blaring the sirens and the announcements all night long at the shack. How's your son doing? They had dragged the son's body inside as the bullets were raining down on the house from the government agents. Dragged the corpse inside. Their baby boy. I can't yell right now because it'll wake the neighbors up. I've already had, I would be very loud right now over this. Anybody who supports this sort of stupidity, because I don't want a single one of us to be victimized in this way by the anti-whites. Nobody is going to lose a son by listening to what no white guilt has to say. You know, when they brought that boy in that house, their baby boy, his chest was blown open. Do you realize that? I want you to think about that. When you're thinking about, let's tell folks some practical solutions about things they can do. They can move out somewhere and they can give the government a lewd gesture. I want you to think about Weaver's son with his chest blown open, the exit wound. Your baby boy, what was he, 10? 14? How old was he? And then to have the government blaring, this is in World of Warcraft, blaring, how's your son doing? So then finally, after the torture of whatever number of days, Weaver says the wife is coming outside with the infant. Don't shoot her, take her and the baby. She opens the door slowly, comes out with the infant, and an agent puts a bullet through the infant's head and through the mother's heart. You still want to recommend to people to this course of action? Because if you do, we know what kind of person you are. You still have to look at what happened down in Texas. You still want to watch what happened there. All of those children and women, men, fathers burning alive. May or may not have happened. You know, just consult YouTube and Snopes whether or not that happened, whether or not they burned alive. And then on a much smaller scale, these folks who begin talking about these things, we just had 3 guys arrested, 2 Americans, 1 Canadian, talking about, and you know they weren't talking about starting race war like the anti-white media is telling the world. They're telling the world that because that fits the anti-white narrative. That's why they're telling the world that. What these guys were undoubtedly talking about was being braggadocious. We could take on the government sort of talk. We could do this. Let's get enough militias together. We could do this. Now where they're going to go? Give them their tube of Vaseline because they're heading to prison. Now, I don't want anybody heading to prison for something so dumb. What happened after my argument, and we mentioned it earlier, somebody asked on PWR, and Mark said, well, we're not going to get into that. Look at Jason's face. Somebody asked about these folks who talk about war all the time and defeating the United States and all of this idiocy, all of this violence. After I argued with that guy politely, he might be a wonderful person away from here. I don't know. Might be a wonderful person. So people have told me he's a wonderful person. But after I argued with that guy, because those positions lead to the kind of things happening that I say will happen. I said on that PWR, people are going to get arrested in their basements with MREs, ammo, and guns. 2 days later, I think it was, 2 or 3 days later, right in Maryland, right up the road, a guy dragged out of his basement. He'll never see the light of day again. Better have a big tube of Vaseline for him and his ass. Basement full of MREs, guns, bullets, talking on encrypted networks to others in the revolution who just happen to be federal agents. So no one is going to have to drag their dead son with his guts and his heart and his rib cage blown open for them to look at, and his lifeless eyes, lids wide open, rolling in his head. No one is going to have to see that because they listen to No White Guilt. That's going to have to be the anti-whites changing the social context into something that is deleterious for them. And you know what? If they change it into a different social context that is deleterious for them and their rule, we better have enough people going free to be able to resist the psychological warfare that is being used against us. Because if we don't, we won't be able to take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to us at that time. So you know, for everybody out there who wants to, and Jared, George, and I still want to do a show. We definitely intend to do a show for legitimate prepping and we continue to advocate that if you live in a city or a town or wherever you are, suburbia, you are in a dangerous place. Get out of that place, get your family somewhere safe. If you can, if you're lucky enough to have some other families who are also going free and you all can find an area to go live together, do that. Don't try to cut yourself off from society, because first of all, you're not cut off. All of you out there who think that you're going to do something original, you're going to go live off the grid. You people are tyros. You're beginners at that shit. I know people who really went off the grid and they were still on the grid. They still had to get their cooking oil and heating oils. They still had to get their medications. They still had to get all these things from society. So if society were to crumble, they would have died. So this is nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. If you have a group of families and you can move together out somewhere and keep your children safe, inoculate them against mean pathogens. I'm sure, David, this is the kind of thing that you and your friends that you all want to do. I'm going to grant you the benefit of the doubt, as I intellectually honest as I would be with anyone in any kind of conversation until you demonstrate otherwise. I'm sure this is the kind of thing that you would like to do, brother. Get these families together, move someplace where you all can be safe and where you can inoculate your children, and most importantly, transmit. Get this information out to as many of our brothers and sisters as you possibly can on planet Earth. We have to do that. We absolutely don't want one community. We want 1 million such communities scattered all across Western civilization. I'd like to see a homestead here with 2 families, a homestead there with 10 families, a homestead here with 3 families, a suburban community that has 4 city blocks where they're spreading Go Free from house to house to house. People who didn't move to this area for the purpose, but they're going free now, and the area is becoming pristine as a result of it. I want it happening in every imaginable way, because human dynamism is beyond human comprehension. All we can do is feed this gigantic machine of energy, ingenuity, creativity, problem solving, problem challenges, everything out there, and hope to navigate as best we can. We need this grand multiplicity of settlements, if you will, throughout our civilization, so that we cannot be taken out with a single blow by the anti-whites. If we have 2 communities, 2 blows, and we're gone. If we have 3 blows, and we're gone. If we have 10 million, there's not taking us out. It's become too widespread. That is why a curative contagion is the way to go, specifically and most importantly because we are being and have been undermined. Nationalism, patriotism, religious ideology, any of these ideologies have all been undermined and have all failed against the psychological warfare of anti-whiteism. If we are going to win, if we are going to recapture our destinies in any way, shape, or form that it comes in all the ways that it comes in, by all of the incremental ways that we recapture that destiny for our people, if we are going to do it, we have to first treat this psychological warfare with a psychological defense. That's what Going Free does. You can raise all the flags you want. You can name all the new territories you want. You can say, like that militia group did up, where was that? Montana, the Freemen. They flew the U.S. flag upside down. They said, no, we're no longer part of America. They had people armed to the teeth and trained as well as anybody could be trained. The U.S. government just pulled up, shut the water off, shut everything off, started blasting the sonic waves that you can't hear, but drive you insane at their homestead, everything else, until these people started running out of food, going crazy, and giving up and going to jail for the rest of their lives. Let's be smart. We're the most pragmatic ones. We are showing proof of concept. This idea Again, David, not saying this is what you're encouraging, but this idea about everybody moving to one place, that has shown proof of failure again and again and again and again and again. How many times does it have to fail? How many times does the hubris have to be blind to the failures? How myopic does the hubris have to be unseeing of that teenage boy or whatever he was with his guts blown out in the bathroom where they dragged his corpse, where the mother cried every minute of every day and the infant cried every minute of every day because of the mother's wailing and the sirens. And then to be that man and watch, after you tell these people, my wife and infant is coming out, to watch them put a bullet through the baby's head and her heart. Jesus Christ. What kind of a dumbass would advise anybody to do anything like that? Only an anti-white enemy or somebody who's too dangerous or stupid to listen to. And David, this certainly isn't you. I'm talking about there are others out there who are recommending this sort of thing. And it could end in something much less violent, of course. You could be like these old timers I know. I should bring some of them on the show so that people could see these pitiful wretches. The one guy who built the bunker better than anything you all could ever build. Trust me. The bunker to beat all bunkers. And what did he do? He stockpiled and stockpiled and stockpiled and finally decided that, well, the end never came. So he's going to start using some of the food. Well, the food was going bad even at that point. Well, he's going to use the toilet paper that he had stockpiled up in there. And it was disintegrating. Couldn't even use the toilet paper. But his children had become anti-white because he was spending all his time and money on the damn bunker. Your life could end up like that if you go down that kind of a path. So anyhow, I'll see what you all are saying. Not saying that this is David's position at all.